Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Carbohydrates get a really, really bad rap today. I actually had a guy send me a really nice email last week using a low-carb, high-fat, LCHF. I hear that you're part of the LCHF movement, he said. I am too. And I'm not low-carb. I am about carbohydrates, but I think there's a lot that you have to understand about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates today is like copier machines were around the 80s and 90s. After Xerox, everybody called a copy a Xerox. Go Xerox this. And it wasn't a Xerox machine they were even using. Carbohydrates get lumped into one grand category, and I kind of feel like that's a mistake. So, first of all, what are carbohydrates? Let's start there for somebody who really doesn't have a clue.
So we're going to start kind of with the scientific definition, and then we'll kind of move into more of the generic definition. But by science, a carbohydrate is any neutral compound that's made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen as sugar, starches, and cellulose. So
but now,
there you go.
Sugars, starches, and cellulose are handled. Isn't it interesting? Those three things are handled completely differently by the body, right?
They are. I mean, they are a completely different makeup, and they are absorbed, and they act differently in the body. So those are really our three categories are sugars, starches, and fiber. We can call cellulose fiber. And that is what the FDA considers carbohydrates, and that is what everything falls into. So as you said, this is where carbohydrates have kind of got this bum rap, because everything has been lumped into a carb where, again, you've got to break those out and look at each of the categories. What do they do to the bodies? Where are they from? And again, talk about quantities. How important is that?
Okay, so where do carbohydrates come from, and what are the different categories that they arise from? In other words, sugars we know come from generally naturally occurring in fruits, but they also are refined and added to foods, right?
Correct. And I would probably say that the majority of the sugar, especially in the United States, that we consume is not from fruits. It comes from sodas, drinks, processed foods, just an astronomical amount of sugar we consume in a year.
So sugars, are they bad, completely bad, or is there a place for them in our diet?
Oh, absolutely. There is a place. I like fruit sugars, or I'm a honey person. I just love the local honey here. But sugars are important because that's a quick source of energy. It's absorbed very quickly. Within 15 minutes, it is in the bloodstream ready to burn for fuel. So if you're looking for a quick surge of energy, you get those from sugars. Again, it's better to use fruits and honey versus, refined sugars and candy bars and things of that nature.
So it sounds to me like when we talk about sugar versus some of the other carbohydrate sources, we start to get into something that I'd like to call task specificity. So in other words, if your goal was, if today was a day where you weren't going to be very active, sugars may not be a good choice to consume much of. But if you are going to be very active, sugars have a place, for instance, pre-workout, post-workout, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we know that we can burn up, 50 grams, 100 grams if you're going to go exercise. But you're absolutely right. For the average person who doesn't exercise, sugars, we have to be careful. And even athletes on non-exercise days, we need to watch out on how much sugars we intake.
So this is a question as an aside, but do you think it's a mistake to go low carb on your days off? So in other words, if you're training right now, 2 days on, 1 day off, should you continue to eat the way you eat on your day off to maximize the anabolic response of training, or should you back off on the faster carbs, the sugars, so that you don't acquire more body fat?
If you are a skilled athlete, then no. If you're a high-end athlete, because those are the days that you recuperate and you need to replenish your glycogen stores. If you are a weekend warrior or just someone trying to look good or stay in shape, yeah, I think that's pretty good principle. Again, it takes several days for this whole deprivation to take place. So by lowering your carbohydrate or your sugar intake on those days off, and again, we're not saying take none. We're just saying elevating on the days that you work out and then taking a normal amount on your rest days, I think is good practice for longevity, keeping your body fat and your weight down.
Do you think that the traditional bodybuilder falls into a unique category? Because as a rule, they don't do a lot of cardio because they believe it's going to suppress muscle gains. And they train, if they're training like Lee Haney, to stimulate, not annihilate. So they're staying maybe in the gym an hour tops. And the type of work that they're doing may not be as glycogen dependent as, let's say, long distance cycling or running or rowing or something like that. And then they consume large amounts of rapid absorbing carbohydrates post-workout with the assumption of restoring glycogen. But how much glycogen really needs to be restored after that type of a workout throughout that type of a day?
That's really going to depend on individual to individual. And I think, from the bodybuilding standpoint, that is the extreme sport. It's the only sport that we bodybuilders are judged by their appearance, not their performance. So if you're looking to be a bodybuilder, some people can absorb more carbohydrates. Some people like to do cardio. The other think that cardio burns muscle. Therefore, they're going to take in less carbohydrates or less sugars. So I think it just depends on what school you're from. I know from my past.
And that's what I was going to ask you, because you were a very successful competitive bodybuilder, but you were also a competitive power lifter. Where did you fall into that category?
I tried both, and it wasn't anything that was taught. At first I ate a lot of everything. Went to the buffet, didn't matter if it was fried, you name it. And then as I learned that I needed to eat more quality food, protein was important. And then I got to limiting my carbohydrates. But what I found was I actually lowered my metabolism. And I didn't have the strength. So when I actually increased those carbohydrates back, I found that it was better to expend more calories, do some type of cardio daily, and I was able to maintain more mass, eat more calories on a diet. So I'm a firm believer that carbohydrates are very, very important for bodybuilders and for dieting. Again, it just depends on your body, your activity level, how quickly you can drop body fat.
Now, this is an interesting point that you make here. So people who go on low carbohydrate diets for long periods of time, they see a downregulation in thyroid hormone production. They see a downregulation in basal metabolic rate. The body becomes conservative. It becomes economically concerned about its future. So it starts to conserve energy. And they don't see the type of results they want to see if they are very, very active individuals. Why is it that carbohydrates seem to signal the metabolism more so than fats or proteins?
Well, first of all, low-carb diets only work for a short period of time. That's why most of these people who get on low-carb or no-carb for long periods of time go off, because you'll actually quit losing weight based on what you said. But what happens is, again, carbohydrates is your fuel. That's what your body burns for fuel. It's quickly absorbed. It's readily available. If you don't take in any carbohydrates, your body then has to go to its next sources of fuel. And believe it or not, your body would actually rather burn muscle before fat. It isn't until those BCAAs start to drop into the bloodstream that your body says, wait a minute, I'm now burning muscle. Let me now convert to fat. But that could be a week or two. That's why you see so many wrestlers and inexperienced bodybuilders or powerlifters who are trying to drop weight. They lower their carbohydrates and they lose so much muscle because they've actually burnt that muscle for fuel.
Okay, so what is considered low carb? Where are the thresholds? And I know there's lots of schools here of thought, but what do you consider low carb? And what do you consider sensible carb intake?
I think you got to look more from a percentage of your calories. I think, again, carbohydrates need to be in that 55% range. Your protein being in the 25 to 35 and the rest being fat. Again, I'm kind of a believer in a more controlled fat diet and a quality carbohydrate and a quality protein. So, you just do the math depending on what your intake is. It's really hard to tell somebody to only take in X amount of grams of carbs because you have no idea of their activity level or what their caloric intake is. Interesting.
Because a lot of people go, you've got to eat below 60 grams of carbs a day in order to see the magic in a low-carb diet. That's really low to me. Do you think if an athlete or an athletic individual who is 200, 230 pounds starts to eat below a threshold of 55% carbohydrates, really, they're eating maybe only 15, 20% of their caloric intake from carbohydrates. Do you think that there is any danger to them?
Yeah, they're going to run out of energy. They're going to have trouble building muscle. They're going to have no endurance and stamina. Without carbohydrates, those are fuel for the brain. You don't concentrate. Again, thinking back of the bodybuilding days when really we didn't go low carbs until 3 days or 4 days out where we went zero carbs. And it was almost impossible to function. It was really difficult to remember things. So again, an athlete without carbohydrates isn't going to perform as well as an athlete with. And there have been numerous studies done, on both ends of the spectrum. But again, think about not putting any gas in your car. How long are you going to go? You're going to run out. Carbohydrates is your gas. It's your fuel.
Here's what I want to do. I want to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I want to talk about good carbohydrate sources and carbohydrate timing for those in the audience, which are more athletic types. We're talking right now with Dr. Jeff Golini. This is Science for Humans, brought to you here on Supreme Radio Network by All American Pharmaceutical. And don't forget their product line, All American EFX Sports. We're going to be actually talking about one of their products when we come back. And I've got some really interesting feedback to give. Dan Matha has been using Carbolin in his training, and he told me an interesting story yesterday at the gym. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Freakish muscle gains, Freakmaker Build from AAEFX. It's a scientifically engineered post-workout formula that combines Frotalin, whey isolate, whey concentrate, milk isolate, casein, and egg, quality protein sources with Carbolin, pre-alkaline, and medium-chain triglycerides. A 2-to-1 carb-to-protein ratio to optimize post-training recovery and repair. Freakmaker Build delivers 58 grams of fast-absorbing Carbolin to replenish glycogen stores and 1.5 grams of pre-alkaline pH-buffered creatine monohydrate. Get Freakmaker Build today. Go to superhumanradio.com and click the AAEFX banner ad.
Never before has an anti-estrogen been so powerful. The triazole formula is built on a potent all-natural aromatase inhibitor called Pizole, which has been shown in clinical trial to be as effective as a leading prescription aromatase inhibitor. Pizole works in concert with the rest of the triazole formula to control estrogen while simultaneously boosting testosterone significantly. In fact, one of triazole's testers had a 120% increase in total testosterone and a 257% increase in free testosterone. Triazole is available at bodybuilding.com, nutriplanet.com, or where finer supplements are sold. For more information, check out getds.com.
Hey, this is Carl. Start your day just like I do with a high-dose lipospheric vitamin C from Live On Labs. You too can benefit from Live On Labs' lipospheric delivery system. No more pills or powders. That's outdated technology. Live On Labs has the world's most efficient vitamin delivery system, period. Learn a lot more today at liveonlabs.com and benefit from their new reduced pricing. That's liveonlabs.com, Livon labs.com.
Your physique is carved from sweat, reps, and discipline. It's time to show off your hard work with Quest Apparel. Clothes engineered to enhance the contours of your body. The makers of the #1 selling Quest bar created Quest Apparel with your body and philosophy in mind. Every shirt, pant, and dress has an inspirational custom tagline as a reminder to yourself and a subtle message to those around you that you carve your path to be the exception because you are made, not born. Go to questapparel.com, enter code SUPERHUMAN to receive 20% off your purchase today.
The 1-2 punch for muscle growth is increased pump and increased intensity. Research shows metabolic changes occur that yield bigger, stronger muscles. Harness the power of agmatine plus carnosine beta-alanine to give your workouts the intensity, pump, and metabolic changes that you'll not only feel but be able to see. Go to superhumanradio.com and use the coupon code SHR to get Prime Nutrition's Ultimate Stack and save 30% off. That's a savings of over $12. Get the most out of your next training session with Prime Nutrition's Nitric Oxide Plus Intensity Stack. Prime Nutrition, the best or nothing. The health and performance benefits of phytonutrients are indisputable, but getting all of your phytonutrients from your diet is difficult. That's why Prime Nutrition introduced PhytoForm. PhytoForm has nearly 11 grams of all the micronized veggies, fruits, fiber, minerals, and antioxidants you need. Alfalfa, organic spirulina, and chlorella, plus acai, pomegranate, goji, bilberry, blueberry, raspberry, cranberry, and papaya. Cabbage, spinach, broccoli, beet, the list goes on and on. You won't find a better, more complete fruits and greens blend anywhere. It even includes PQQ, which has been shown to improve mitochondrial biogenesis. Go to superhumanradio.com and click the Prime Nutrition banner ad today and use coupon code SHR to save 30% off. Prime Nutrition, the best or nothing. Hey, this is Carl. Start your day just like I do with a high-dose lipospheric vitamin C from Live On Labs. You too can benefit from Live On Labs' lipospheric delivery system. No more pills or powders. That's outdated technology. Live On Labs has the world's most efficient vitamin delivery system, period. Learn a lot more today at liveonlabs.com and benefit from their new reduced pricing. That's liveonlabs.com, Livon labs.com.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back to Science for Humans with Dr. Jeff Golini. So, ideal carbohydrate sources for pre, intra, and post-workout. This is something that's very, very new. In the past, I'd say 6 years, lots of novel forms of carbohydrate have come out that are not sugars, but seem to get into the bloodstream very quickly. Can you explain, first of all, how they do this?
Well, the only novel form is actually carbolin. That's clinically proven to be absorbed as quickly as a sugar, but being sugar-free. I think most of the ones that I have seen that have claimed are just marketing research. Vitargo also has some research that their product is absorbed relatively quickly, but the studies were done in Sweden. They were done quite a few years ago. I don't believe there were like IRB numbers and things. But other than that, there is no other carbohydrate novel, supplement type product that is absorbed that quickly.
So how does it do this? What makes it get into the bloodstream so quickly, but yet it's not a sugar?
Well, the neat thing is I'm a carbohydrate freak. I love carbs. I like meat too, but I love carbs. So when I was training more seriously, I was trying to find a better way to get carbohydrates into my system, either for carb loading or for pre-workout, instead of using simple sugars and things. But the interesting thing about carbolin is that it's made up of many monosaccharides that are joined together, and because of the molecular structure of this particular compound, we can actually get it to dump into the stomach, meaning that it completely bypasses the stomach. Very interesting. I've received a grant from the Montana Research and Commercialization Grant Board recently, and we just finished a nice double-blind IRB certified study on carbolin, and we tested it against glucose. We had done this before, but this was a much higher-end, more controlled study. And again, by the 15-minute blood draw, we had already spiked glucose levels, which means, our product was absorbed probably somewhere around the 7 to 8 minute, which was as quick or quicker than sugar. So again, it comes down to the molecular structure, getting it to dump through the stomach. Pretty cool phenomena.
So it actually goes through the lining of the stomach, you're saying, into the wall of the stomach and into the bloodstream. Boom, it's there.
It's there, ready to burn.
So does this have, does molecular weight have a role in this phenomenon?
It does. Molecular structure, molecular weight are all kind of entwined together. Because it's a starch component, it needs to be a higher molecular weight, but it needs to be the right amount of monosaccharides and the right form. So there's a lot that kind of goes in for this phenomena to happen, which is why Carbolin has a patent pending. No one has anything like it or has done anything like it.
Now, you use a variety of different sources to produce Carbolin, right? It's not just one thing that you make it from, right?
Correct. I mean, you can make starch from almost anything that is, a grain of some type. In the early years, I was looking for the things that would work the best, that would be absorbed as quickly, and I could get it to taste good and accomplished everything. So Carbolin is from potato, rice, and corn. It was a combination of those three things that I found were the best sources to accomplish what we now call Carbolin.
And I would I have to imagine the reason that you're using these three sources, because it probably would be a lot cheaper for you to use one source, but the reason you're using these three sources is because each of them brings to the party something unique that makes Carbolin what it is, right?
Correct. Each of them has a different molecular structure. So remember also in this study, not only did we show how quickly Carbolin was absorbed, but we saw
sustained,
that
right?
At about 35 minutes, we were peaking. Now, these people are on a treadmill, and we're taking blood every 15 minutes. And we were in the system for about 75 minutes. So, again, these different sources are what give us that long duration, where sugar spikes and then, boom, it drops.
So, Dan Matha, I had you send him a sample of Carbolin. He is with the OVW now, and he's actually had a meeting with the WWE, and I predict that we're going to hear his name in the future because he's going to be one of their rising stars. And so he's 275 pounds. He took 50-gram scoop of Carbolin before training one day, and his training generally lasts 3 to 5 hours, depending on what they're doing. And that's after he goes to the gym in the morning. So he trains in the morning for 2 hours, then he goes to the wrestling camp, and he trains for another 3 to 5 hours. And generally, he said, around the third hour, he's pretty much gassing out. It's so much work that they have to do, and it's so physical. And plus, they're banging their bodies around, so it's high-impact physical. It's not just physical. And so he told me that after that scoop of Carbolin, where he normally starts to feel a little dreary, he thought he was in the gym. He thought he was training for less time than he was. When he looked at his watch and realized that he had already been training for 3 hours, he couldn't believe it. He came in the next day and he said to me, that stuff is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well, the number one reason why athletes, no matter what your sport, hit that wall is you have depleted glycogen. So the quicker you can replenish that, the more that you can do, the quicker you recover and recuperate. I mean, it's probably one of the most important things that we take, which is why, I feel that you need more carbohydrates than you do protein.
Well, and so now I'm going to shed another insight of my own. So, I'm a huge fan of training fasted, but one of the things that I've learned about training fasted is you've got a certain amount of time that you can train for. And once you try to go beyond that window of time, blood sugar starts to drop very, very quickly. And blood sugar dropping precipitates itself in the brain before it precipitates itself in the body. So I was training fasted for a very, very long time, and I was training fasted recently, and I had to train legs, and I was squatting, and I had already done a bunch of heavy movements already. And after I got finished squatting, I became lightheaded after every single set. I had to literally hang on to things. My heart was pumping fine. It wasn't, Carl, no, my heart was pumping fine. Everything was fine. But I was getting that phenomenon that they call in the medical industry syncope. I was starting to white out a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I took some Carbolin that was supposed to be post-workout. I ended up drinking it then, and I waited 10 minutes. And I went back in and I finished my squats, and I did not get that feeling like I was going to pass out after the set. And that's when it dawned on me. We've talked about studies on this show that fatigue is mediated by the brain. When the brain says, I'm not getting what I need, I don't care about the body. I'm shutting the body down because I'm not getting what I need. And I say that the presence of carbolin in the bloodstream and the elevated glucose in the bloodstream tells the brain you can go on, and the brain says to the body, go ahead and play, just leave me alone. But when blood sugar starts to dip and the brain goes, oh wow, I'm having moments here where, I'm not getting what I need, I'm not letting the body go on anymore because I have to protect myself. So it's not just about carbolin fueling the muscle. It's about carbolin telling the brain, everything's okay, let us keep playing.
Absolutely, and that's what a lot of people forget is that is the first thing that happens on any low carb is your brain will start to shut down, telling your body, hey, reserve energy, sit down, stop, I'm not getting what I need.
Yeah, it's really amazing. It's a great product, I got to tell you. And I'll tell you something else. I mix it with a peanut butter protein powder post-workout, and it tastes just like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich drink. It's so good. I love carbolin. I have never been a fan of post-workout high sugar drinks, and I used to use dextrose back in the day when that was all the rage, right? Dextrose, and that stuff it would literally make me feel washed out and nauseous about an hour after I drank it.
Yeah, carbolin is cost effective. It's quicker. You can go ahead and have a whole grain pasta, but eat it the night before, and then you have no way of controlling. Why don't we give everybody an opportunity to get a free sample if they'd like?
How's that? How can they do that?
Well, I guess they would email the show at what address?
onair@superhumanradio.com. And what will they get, Dr. Jeff?
I'm going to send you a couple workouts or a couple days supply, and it'll be absolutely free. Carbolin is one of those things that don't take my word for it or Carl's. You got to try it.
So here's what you need to do. Send an email to onair@superhumanradio.com. Put the word carbolin, Karbolyn, in the subject line. Make sure you include your mailing address. Dr. Jeff, what if these are international requests?
No problem. We'll ship them overseas to them.
And you will receive carbolin, a few samples of carbolin, so you can try it as a pre-workout, post-workout, even intra-workout drink yourself and find out for yourself. I think that's very, very generous. Thank you so much, Dr. Jeff.
You're welcome.
All right, so there you have it. Carbohydrates, friend, not foe. And we will see you next week on Science for Humans, right?
We sure will. Have a good one.
Thanks, Dr. Jeff.